Addabbo. I'm the executive director of Oregon Adaptive Sports. We're a nonprofit. Our office is based in Bend. You may be familiar with seeing us providing adaptive ski experiences up at Mount Bachelor or Hoodoo. We were founded in 1996, so we're coming up on our 25th anniversary this coming winter season. From the big picture, what we do is we provide access to the outdoors for people with disabilities. That includes kids and adults and seniors. It includes individuals with physical disabilities, such as spinal cord injuries or neuromuscular or neurological disabilities and diseases, as well as children with congenital disabilities like Down syndrome or autism. Our mission is to provide life-changing outdoor experiences for individuals with disabilities, and through those programs, we help our athletes develop confidence, self-esteem, and ultimately strive for independence. We know, as I'm guessing a lot of you know, that if you participate in a healthy and active community, it leads to a healthy and thriving life. You're often more engaged in your community, more likely to be employed, you do better at school, you're stronger family connections. All of that happens through the work that we do. Currently, we offer 10 different sports. In the wintertime, we offer skiing, snowboarding, cross-country skiing, and snowshoeing. We are still very active at Mount Bachelor and at Hoodoo. In the summer, we offer 6 different sports: cycling, mountain biking, rock climbing, hiking, golf, and paddling. So you'll see us all over Central Oregon during the summer months. Speaking to the need of why we exist, sometimes these numbers are surprising to individuals. Recent studies and surveys conducted by the Oregon Health Authority determined that 24% of adults and 30% of youth report living with a disability. If you apply that just to Central Oregon, that's tens of thousands of individuals that could potentially benefit from our services. Not all of those present as something visual that you might see that they have a disability, they use a wheelchair or something. It could be invisible disabilities, so to speak. And for many individuals, access to engage in that healthy and active lifestyle is prevented by various types of barriers. Some of our equipment related, some are access, some are programmatic. And that's really the core of the work we do, is addressing those barriers. And the goal is to help everybody achieve health equity. And what we take is this great definition from that same survey by the Oregon Health Authority, that health equity exists when all people can reach their full health potential. And I like to expand on that saying that having a disability doesn't mean that you have to be unhealthy. You can have a spinal cord injury and you can still be very active. You can be an elite level athlete. Following the Olympic Games, in a few weeks will be the Paralympic Games, where you'll see some of the most elite athletes on the planet with disabilities doing some very impressive feats. So we're helping people realize that full health potential. And we're helping them do that despite being disadvantaged by a social or economic status, which could include class, race, ethnicity, religion, age, disability, gender, identity, and sexual orientation. Our focus, of course, is on disability. This is a nice kind of visual that I think speaks to the work that we do. If you give everybody a bicycle, that's great, but it's not really going to work for the little kid that can't ride a big adult-sized bicycle, or the person with a disability that can't ride a regular panicycle or a regular bicycle. If you apply the right tools and provide the right access, you can see everybody can participate. What I also love is we don't necessarily need these cartoons, because we do this every day at Oregon Adaptive Sports all year round. We serve, before the pandemic, which has scaled our numbers back slightly, we were serving about 500 unique individuals with disabilities every year through tens of thousands of hours of program activities. Most people participate with us on a regular basis. They ski with us every week, they bike with us every week, they develop the skills, and they become really active parts of our community. We serve also specific programs for veterans. George here in the middle is an Air Force veteran. He's been skiing with us for about 15 years, as well as, again, many local kids. Another fact that I like to throw out is about half of our athletes often come to us from outside of Central Oregon. So we have a number of folks in the Eugene and Southern Willamette Valley area that will visit us up at Hoodoo for skiing, as well as we serve as a destination in the wintertime in particular for people with disabilities to come and ski. The Mount Bachelor and Hoodoo programs are the premier adaptive ski location for anybody in Oregon and Washington. We run the only 7-day-a-week operation for adaptive skiing in all of Oregon and Washington. So we see people from Seattle and across the Northwest coming to visit us for our programs. It's a little hard to read, but the specific barriers that we address are Adaptive sports equipment. Some of these things that you see here, like these sit skis and adaptive mountain bikes, the price range usually starts at about $5,000 or $6,000 per unit and climbs to $10,000 or $15,000 or more. So we write a lot of grants, we do a lot of fundraising to help purchase and acquire that and maintain that equipment and provide access to it. Not only that, but a lot of these things weigh 40, 50, 60 pounds, and they're just logistically impossible for people to transport on their own. So we have offices at the ski areas, we have trailers, we have the ability to transfer that and take them to the places where people want to use them. Another big barrier is having the support. A lot of individuals with disabilities need individualized support to get outside. But a really easy example for that is someone who's visually impaired or blind. We take visually impaired athletes skiing, mountain biking, hiking, paddling all the time, but those folks almost always need somebody with them to help guide them. That can be extended to many individuals, not just the visually impaired population, but we provide that individualized support, and we put our staff and volunteers through hundreds of hours of training every year. There are now certifications in a lot of these sports. Adaptive skiing you can actually pursue as a professional career and get really advanced certifications, all of which we are pushing our staff to continue to obtain. Accessible transportation is an issue across Central Oregon. There is public transportation, but it doesn't generally take you to a lot of the outdoor places, trailheads, lakes. So we have a small 3-vehicle fleet, including an accessible, wheelchair accessible bus that we use to transfer our athletes to programs when needed. The general barrier for many people with outdoors is the cost. Skiing alone is just an expensive sport. Lift tickets, goggles, helmets, skis, boots, all those things. You can extrapolate that to rock climbing or mountain biking or many of the things we offer. So we work very hard to reduce or eliminate the cost of participation with us wherever we can. This past winter, we offered over $80,000 in scholarships to our athletes, reducing the cost of their program experience with us. We have specific opportunities for veterans, new to OAS athletes, as well as youth to participate with us on a regular basis at no cost. So we will partner with Now Bachelor to help discount or get donated lift tickets, and we will get grant funding or solicit donations to help offset or underwrite the cost of those experiences so people can get out and participate with us free of charge. The last barrier that we address and are doing more and more so centers around advocacy, and it's just the continued lack of representation of individuals with disabilities in the outdoor community. Major brands like the North Face or Patagonia, you think about outdoor retailer type brands, or large entities, places like ski resorts or parks districts, things like that, we still find that individuals with disabilities are underrepresented in their marketing efforts and their planning efforts, and so we're really trying hard to have people participate in those conversations. We've developed a strengthening bond with the Bend Parks and Recreation District, as every time they build a new park now, we're getting a phone call, which is great because they're involving us in the planning process and designing things to be accommodating to a lot of our participants and the greater community that may not directly work with us. With those barriers, as I mentioned, we focus on these pillars of access, which address each one of those barriers. Again, adaptive sports equipment, we have over $200,000 of equipment that we currently maintain. The training for our staff and volunteers, maintaining those vehicles, which is increasingly a challenge in Central Oregon. Our accessible bus has, we had our catalytic converter stolen earlier this year. You've heard about that as an increasing trend across the country. So we were able to get that replaced with insurance and are now finding secure places to park, but even as a nonprofit, we're not immune to some of these other challenges going on in Central Oregon. Free or low-cost programs and continued community partnerships and advocacy. Always just love showing pictures of what we do. So cycling extends to all ages and abilities. We have little kids hand cycles. We have off-road hand cycles. I see another picture of that. We also do a lot of tandem biking. This is Nancy Stevens, who many of you may know. She's very active in the community. She volunteers and works with us quite a bit, riding down the Sun River with one of our volunteers. Mountain biking is a really popular sport with a lot of our athletes. It's growing across the board, as a sport, and we're seeing more and more folks with disabilities participating. These are just some samples of adaptive mountain bikes. You're going to see them with like 3 wheels. They also are usually hand-powered. Many of them now are benefiting from the electric assist technology that you're seeing happen across a lot of cycling sports. It's really a game changer for athletes with disabilities. Paddling, we do kayaking and paddle boarding. A lot of our paddling adaptations are pretty simple. We use a lot of tandem kayaks, which helps give people support. We also have little small adaptations. It's hard to tell in this picture, but this gentleman here is a young adult from Medford who had a stroke at about age 16 or 17. Because of that, he has hemiplegia on the left side of his body, and you can see in this picture his arm is kind of secured actually underneath his life jacket, and he has what we call a paddle pivot that allows him to paddle with one arm. So we have lots of cool little tips and tricks and pieces of gear that help make all these different sports accessible for a variety of populations. Hiking, I heard a couple people out hiking recently. We do a lot of hiking with all sorts of populations. Pictured here actually is one of our instructors, Adrian, who himself is an amputee. He lost his leg in a mountaineering accident and has decided to give back and started working with us this summer. He's a great kid. He's like 22 years old, tons of energy, and it's great to have working with our athletes. Behind him is Bruce, who's actually on our board of directors, and Bruce is an individual that's blind. And with some active guiding from Adrian, I think they're out on the Deschutes River Trail in that picture. We do a lot of hiking. We also have some really cool hiking wheelchairs and other types of devices to get folks with mobility impairments out on the trail. Golf, we have a great golf program. We run primarily at Aubrey Glen Golf Course in Bend. They host us once or twice a month for a golf clinic. Pictured there is a solo rider. It's a seated golf cart that is hand powered, and the seat you can see actually lifts up, so somebody with impairment to their lower extremities is still able to participate in golf. They're pretty cool. They're actually designed with a little bit extra like stance and wheelbase, so you can drive them on the green and stuff, and it doesn't damage the golf course. So there's two of these at Aubrey Glen, and there's another one that kind of floats around Central Oregon that folks use. We do some rock climbing. This is a picture from the Bend Rock Gym. We also get out here to Smith Rock quite a bit. We didn't last summer because of the pandemic. We've been out once this year. We hope to go back in the fall. All sorts of different devices and adaptations for adaptive rock climbing, different types of seats and pulleys and all sorts of stuff to get folks climbing. We love Nordic skiing, especially this last winter with the pandemic. It was a great opportunity. Sometimes it doesn't look any different than your standard Nordic skiing. Sometimes we utilize specialized equipment. Snowboarding, again, a great sport for many individuals. We have an annual camp for the deaf and hard of hearing for youth ages 13 to 18 that we put on up at Mount Bachelor every year, as well as just seeing lots of other individuals participating in that sport. And then, of course, alpine skiing, which we've been doing now for 25 years. So we have lots of sit skiers, lots of visually impaired skiers, lots of kids, lots of adults. We're busy every single day of the winter with that sport. And then snowshoeing, of course, which I'm assuming you're all familiar with. Folks don't want to be sliding on snow. So what we have going on this summer, and I'll hand out some flyers, or at least some if you're interested. We have ongoing community programs. So every week we have free adaptive cycling clinics at Pine Nursery Park in Bend on Wednesday afternoons and Saturday mornings. We have about 30 adaptive cycles that are out there. We have a couple staff and a handful of volunteers supporting folks. We have a clinic going on tonight. We have 9 or 10 athletes coming. We also offer monthly clinics in mountain biking. We have the twice monthly golf clinics. We've been doing kind of occasional paddling and rock climbing clinics as well. All of our community programs are always free of charge. Whether it's winter or summer, we always offer them at no cost to the community. They can show up, have no expectation to pay anything. They can stay as long as they want. It's supposed to be a really low barrier to entry. We just want to get more people moving and getting them active in the community. We also have partnerships where we work with private or custom groups. We did a program with the Wounded Warrior Project in May, where 6 veterans with disabilities did 2 days of mountain biking, a day of paddling, and a day of climbing at Smith Rock with us. We're also working with Craig Hospital, which is a neuro rehabilitation institute out of Denver, and they're the nation's leading spinal cord and brain injury rehabilitation facility. And they are bringing us a group of their alumni, so recently discharged patients with spinal cord injuries are coming to Bend the last week, or actually the first week of October, to do 3 days of mountain biking and a day of paddling with us. And that's a great trip because it's intensive. We work about 25 hours with that group on activities for that week, we see a big progression, and those individuals are just transitioning back into their everyday life after getting out of the hospital. So it's a huge step forward for them in their rehab process. And then we also offer private lessons. So if you're an individual with a disability and you're new to the sports or getting into the outdoors and you just need that individualized support that we mentioned earlier, you can call us and set up an appointment, and we can take you out in any of the sports that we offer to a whole number of programming locations throughout Central Oregon. Always like to outline what are some of our current needs. So we always need funding for scholarships and equipment. We actually have developed specific project right now that I've been writing a ton of grants for called the Access for All project. We're looking to invest about $80,000 in new equipment and $80,000 in program support over the next 14 or 15 months. Been getting some good leads so far on local grant opportunities for that. We always are just in need of continued outreach and volunteer recruitment, as well as just telling more people about what we do. We often meet people with disabilities that had no idea we existed, even though we've been around for 25 years. So if you have family, friends, community members, please tell them what we do, send them to our website. And similar awareness. Continue to educate more people on the barriers to the outdoors, understanding the need to have that equipment, the need to advocate for people with disabilities when designing outdoor recreation venues and spaces. Because if some of those barriers are removed, it actually makes our work quite a bit easier. And that is it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk more about what we do at OAS.
Couple of questions. One easy one. How do people get to your events? Do you provide some transportation?
Yes. So depending on the location, and I did want to bring up this. Click on this here. So if the location is within, most of our program right now happens within Bend city limits for the summer program. So if accessible transportation is available, we don't provide it. If they can acquire transportation through CET or dial-a-ride services, if we travel beyond somewhere where transportation is provided, then we offer that service. For example, yesterday we had a group of individuals with visual impairments hike along the Metolius, and we provided transportation with our bus. So it depends on the program. But we always make sure it's an option.
And then my next one is, you're primarily physical disability type people. With the emphasis these days on mental health, you incorporate that as well?
Yeah, so we do serve all ages and all abilities. It's a challenge, I will say, for us for our marketing, because the visual disabilities make for good static marketing for pictures and things. We serve a lot of kids with various types of cognitive disabilities. In regards to mental health, as a broader topic, it's certainly incorporated into a lot of what we do, but we don't. I wouldn't say that we serve specifically individuals that are just seeking that specific outlet. If they don't have any other disability, if it's purely like a therapeutic exercise, the work is going to be centered around some specific disability or diagnosis.
So when we were sitting at the table, you said about 30% of your funding comes from grants and donations. So 70%, I'm a little confused. Tell me how you get your money. Everything seems free, and it can't be.
It's certainly not. Yeah, we put a lot of emphasis in the non-part of being a nonprofit. We operate on about a $500,000 a year budget, so a third of that, give or take 100 to 150 to a little bit more depending on the year, will come from foundations or grants, and the rest of we bring in. This year we'll bring in about 5% of that 50 or 500,000 from earned revenue. We do charge for primarily some of the ski programs, like the private lesson ski programs. If they don't qualify for one of those free programs, then there is a cost associated. And then the rest is through private contributions and our fundraising events. So we have a large fundraising event in March called the Ski for All, which is the non-pandemic version of it is a one-day ski-a-thon up at Mount Bachelor, and we've had 200 to 300 people participate, and they're mostly involved with us typically is what it's been, our volunteers and athletes that have gone to their communities, their family and friends and solicit donations. That event has raised about $75,000 a year. We have an event in the fall called the First Chair fundraiser that has raised about $100,000. And then we do some other fundraising campaigns. So really the rest of it comes from those various types of individual contributions.
How many people do you serve?
Prior to the pandemic, we were serving about 500 unique individuals annually. This year, since spring of last year, that number came down to about 300, most of which came in the winter season. We were able to operate with limited capacity, but it came in to about 200 or so athletes that we worked with this season. The piece I'm leaving out of the funding too is it often comes in as part of the events are the like business and local kind of sponsorships. So of all that money combined, that comes out to about $100,000 are gifts from the breweries or other healthcare related organizations and things like that. So they're not quite grants, they're just sponsorship dollars typically associated with one of the events. Yeah.
What, if any, is your relationship to Special Olympics?
Yeah, currently we don't have much of a relationship with them. We do share some of our athletes. So some of our athletes that ski or bike or do other activities with us are also active in Special Olympics. Special Olympics as a whole focuses really intensely historically on individuals with cognitive disabilities. So we serve a much broader population. And we don't offer any type of competition. Everything that we do is really recreation based. So if they're seeking that, that's often what
But you have no objection to them. What they're doing is not what you're doing.
Exactly, yeah.
You're not in competition for the same people.
No, I would say we do it mostly complements what Special Olympics does. If somebody has interest in, the competitions at Special Olympics vary. They can be pretty competitive or they can be, pretty friendly. So it depends on an athlete's interests, but we try not to overlap other services. We've had little interaction with them.
Did you say you were working with Down syndrome?
We do, yeah. We have a number of athletes that have Down syndrome. Our program director, her son has Down syndrome. That's actually how she got involved with us. He started skiing with us when he was 7, I think. He's now 13 or 14. And he actually doesn't ski with us anymore because he's totally independent and just skis with their family. But we serve a lot of folks. One of our biggest annual programs is a partnership we do with the school districts from La Pine all the way up here into Redmond and into Sisters. So we work with 6 or 7 annually high schools generally, as well as the transitions age, which is kind of the step after high school. Their life skills classroom. So they'll bring to us anywhere from 6 to 16 of their students for 3 to 6 weeks of skiing. And often we see the same kids come back every year for 4 or 5 years. And it's really cool because we'll see them with sometimes their first ever day on snow or skis when they're freshmen in high school. And by the time they graduate, they'll be skiing off the summit of Mount Bachelor. Not every kid gets there, but a lot of them reach that progress. And in those classes, we'll see a pretty diverse array of students, many with Down syndrome or intense learning disabilities or on the autism spectrum and things like that.
How long are people in the program? I mean, have you had someone ski with you every year for a decade or more or less?
Definitely, yeah. We have one of those pictures. Gabe is an easy example. He was born and raised in Bend. He's been skiing with us since he was 4 or 5 years old, and he's now about 30. He's skied with us basically every year of the program's existence. OAS was founded originally by local individuals and volunteers that saw the groups at the time in the early 90s coming up to Mount Bachelor, the school groups coming up, and the students with disabilities were unable to ski. They would come with the group and they would sit in the lodge. And so a group of volunteers were aware of adaptive skiing. Some of the technology already existed, and they gathered some interested folks, and they literally started driving up to Bachelor with sit skis in the back of their trucks. And when those kids would show up, they would also take the kids out. Some of them also knew Bill Healy personally, and he, in his later years, also developed a disability. You may know that. So they also took him out a few times. And over the years, the program like all things, it changed and expanded, and then we operated at Hoodoo for a number of years, and now we've gone back to operating at both for over the past decade. We've been at both mountains. Yeah.
How many would you say were in the sport before, and then they had, say, a stroke, and then wanted to be able to continue participating in that type of an activity? You run into very many of those?
I would say most of our athletes that have an acquired disability, a stroke or a traumatic injury, were involved with some type of sport or recreation prior to that. And I would also say that's a big challenge that I see with our organization and similar ones, is trying to capture those individuals that weren't or seemingly aren't interested in sports or recreation, and trying to show them how beneficial that they can be with or without a disability. But we have stroke is a great example. We have a lot of folks that work with us that have had a stroke, and they were perhaps big cyclists before they had a stroke, and then they come to us and they ride in our three-wheel recumbent bikes, or perhaps ride a tandem bike to help aid with balance and things like that. We have a number of folks that participate with us in that type of situation.
Do you have very many people who work with your program who's been a participant that are now teaching or working with, that used to be in the program in the other sense?
We do, yeah. We have I wouldn't say it's a lot, but we have a number of folks that volunteer or even instruct. Adrian, who I mentioned earlier, I actually skied with him a couple years ago, right after his injury, to teach him how to ski on one leg, and now he's back working for us. We have Scott is another example. He's in some of these pictures. He's a board member of ours, and he crosses the line. He volunteers on some activities, and he still shows up as a participant in others. When we go mountain biking, he slots himself in the participant role because he has less experience there. But he shows up every week to our cycling program to help show people how to get involved with the adaptive cycling. So it's a fair amount, but it's not the vast majority. We have, on an annual basis, an active, engaged group of about 200 to 250 volunteers, people that volunteer more than once, that go through our trainings, that are active as part of our programs. And there's, I don't know the number, but there's a chunk that have participated with us as athletes.
How often do you get the kids out?
So in the summer, it varies. We have programs anywhere from twice to 4 or 5 times a week. In the wintertime, we run 7 days a week. So the school groups, for example, they'll come up January, February, early March, and they'll be up at the mountain 3 or 4 days a week, because we'll have a different group coming each one of those days, and then they cycle through. But we will run every day from around mid-December, depending on the snowpack, through the end of March, basically to the end of spring break.
Do you have any luck working with some of the local Central Oregon gear developers for special needs gear?
We do get some support in that capacity with specific needs for welding or machining or something. Most of our gear we don't build it. There's actually manufacturers out all across the country and even the world that are building this specialized equipment. So we just purchase it from the manufacturers, and then we teach people how to use it. That being said, we run into specific instances where every person with a disability is very unique, so they may need a specific adaptation to help them grip an outrigger or a ski pole, and that's where we get into the world of calling up a seamstress or something to help us sew some kind of Velcro thing, or welding on a piece of something to some other piece of equipment. And so we definitely get creative and go through a lot of duct tape and that sort of stuff to problem solve. And generally, everybody's really supportive when we reach out for those types of helps. But we haven't gotten into the world of developing our own unique or one-off pieces of equipment.
One last one.
Yeah.
So, do you do something in Redmond?
We would love to. I would
We
say.
have this canyon trail that's all
Yes.
flat right through the whole middle of town.
Yes, that would be great. So the Dry Canyon Trail, we've been up here to check it out, and we would love to. So part of our cycling program right now is it basically lives in 2 trailers, and at any given time we could hook a couple vehicles up and move it, which was the whole vision of that program. Is how we got it funded. Was it's semi-permanent. It lives there at Pine Nursery Park, but with some planning we could hook up and travel with it. So yes, we would love to, and would love to kind of people. It's been a great infrastructure growth for us because we just bought those trailers this spring. So prior to this year, we could travel with a couple bikes, but not enough to really make a big impact. But we can now move 20 bikes or so at once.
Parks and Rec, maybe a partnership with them could help get support.
Absolutely.
People.
Yeah, that would be great. That's exactly how we built it in Bend. So we'd love, especially if anybody has a personal contact there, I always love those introductions, so that we can also do some outreach as well.
Fantastic. Well, Pat, thank you so much for your time. This
You're
was
welcome.
great. Fantastic.
Handouts, you're welcome to grab these, and my business cards are here as well if you have any questions.